The neighborhood of Maple Ridge had always been known for its calm presentation, wide walking paths, neatly shaped hedges, early morning joggers, and residents who believed in appearances above comfort. The homes were modern, symmetrical, and built to satisfy presentation rather than individuality. Every porch light matched, every mailbox held identical matte black metal finishes, and every driveway looked as if it had been measured, approved, and stamped by a perfection-driven committee. On that particular morning, the sky was bright, without haze, and the gentle morning breeze carried the smell of lawn mulch mixed with dew. The kind of morning where nothing should have gone wrong, especially not something dramatic or community-shifting. The narrator woke early, brewed fresh coffee, and stood near the window while staring at the neighborhood parked vehicles. The garage door remote lay on a small decorative dish, placed next to wallet and keys in the entry hallway. The garage contained his metallic gray SUV, a car purchased years ago after months of financial savings, inspections, and personal research. It was well maintained, polished weekly, and insured with complete documentation stored carefully inside a fireproof file cabinet. There was nothing suspicious about the car, nothing confusing, nothing resembling wrongdoing, and nothing that could ever lead to a criminal assumption. That was until the garage door began rising, metal joints humming smoothly, sunlight flooding the interior, and the moment carried no hint of danger until the sudden scream cut through the peaceful air like an alarm. That scream belonged to Karen, the HOA president, the unofficial neighborhood enforcer, and the self-appointed guardian of property rule perfection. She ran down her driveway with her phone raised above her shoulder, her slippers slapping loudly on the concrete, her facial expression filled with frantic conviction. Her scream echoed across the neighborhood, and the vibration of her hysteria traveled faster than reason. She pointed toward the narrator's opening garage as if witnessing a crime unfolding in real time. Without warning or clarity, she accused him of having a stolen vehicle inside his own home, claiming she had just purchased a similar new SUV and that he must have somehow taken hers. Her certainty overpowered logic, silencing birds, shattering calm, and turning what should have been a normal morning into an outrageous HOA meltdown that none of the neighbors would ever forget. The narrator remained still, unwilling to escalate, staring at the woman who had already cast judgment, ready to weaponize rules and authority, even if she misunderstood everything she was seeing. The neighborhood, once silent, became stage and audience all at once. Karen's personal worldview was built on control. She believed every resident must submit, obey, and acknowledge her unwritten supremacy. She studied every driveway, inspected every trash bin, memorized every property layout, and often reported imaginary violations even when no rule existed. Her obsession with authority caused her to interpret ordinary living as potential infractions. The narrator's quiet, private life had always been her unspoken challenge because he showed no need to impress others, never attended voluntary meetings, and showed kindness without conformity. The accusation escalated in her mind with every step she took. She convinced herself that ownership, paperwork, and logic could be bypassed if emotional certainty was strong enough. Her voice continued echoing across the homes, causing residents to open blinds, lift curtains, peek around porch columns, and observe the spectacle forming. Some recognized immediately that anything involving Karen was always dramatic, always self-centered, and always one-sided. Others remained unsure, uncertain whether evidence or assumption was leading the moment. The narrator simply placed the coffee mug down on the edge of the porch railing, stood still, and allowed events to unfold because engaging in argument would only give power to irrational theatrics. The garage door continued its upward motion until it reached the top, exposing the SUV fully to daylight and proving visibly that nothing suspicious had occurred. Yet the state of proof did not register for Karen. Her mind had already selected guilt over truth, and she prepared to escalate the situation further, determined to win instead of listen. Karen pressed the emergency digits on her phone with determination, convinced her actions were justified. The tone of her breathing was aggressive, shallow, and fueled by imagined betrayal. Neighbors gathered cautiously, whispering and recording discreetly. Some had previous experiences with her hostility, receiving unjust fines, threatening notes, or humiliating public confrontations. When she made the emergency call, she constructed her version of events, fabricating certainty rather than stating verifiable facts. The call dispatcher responded seriously, unaware that this was not a real crime. A patrol unit was assigned, believing a stolen vehicle case required immediate urgency. The narrator stood beside the SUV, calm and mentally prepared for verification because truth came with documentation and accuracy. Karen paced anxiously in her yard, her messy robe swaying in morning breeze, convinced she was saving the neighborhood from theft, when in truth she was only exposing her obsession. The tension built slowly like storm clouds forming without visible rain. The children who were preparing for weekend leisure paused from bicycles, tricycles, sidewalk chalk drawings, and playground routines to witness the chaos. Families who planned relaxing mornings now watched an entirely different morning unfold, one led by misunderstanding and ego rather than calm logic. Soon the first police cruiser approached with controlled speed, lights reflecting through windows, creating a surreal combination of suburban uniformity and sudden emergency atmosphere. The officer stepped out with authority, scanning faces, interpreting body language, and attempting to assess danger. Karen rushed forward, repeating her claims with breathless panic. The officer shifted his focus to the narrator, who responded by remaining composed, retrieving ownership documents, previous insurance confirmations, maintenance invoices, digital photo records, service logs, and proof that the SUV had been his property for years. Everything aligned perfectly, nothing contradictory, nothing suspicious. The officer then examined the vehicle registration plate, VIN, and documentation. His observations concluded that the SUV was not stolen property, nor recently purchased, nor matching the description Karen claimed. The officer then redirected attention toward Karen, requesting details and encouraging rational narrative rather than emotional assumptions. Her facial expression slowly shifted from certainty to confusion, then from confusion to stubborn disbelief. The community surrounding them remained silent, aware that this moment represented something larger than a car misunderstanding. It represented years of built-up tension surrounding HOA authority, unchecked personal ego, and the breaking point of power misused. The officer carefully inspected every detail of the narrator's documentation, while the surrounding neighborhood held a silent collective breath. The morning sun reflected against the SUV's polished surface, revealing long-term signs of ownership such as faded interior stitching, personalized trunk organizers, and custom-installed roof equipment that clearly did not match a recently purchased showroom vehicle. The narrator remained still, his calm presence serving as its own silent testimony, presenting maturity against chaos. Karen's eyes scanned the vehicle with desperation, seeking any minor detail she could twist into new accusations. The more facts emerged, the more her internal pressure intensified, transforming her confidence into quiet panic. The neighbors could see it physically, her shoulders tensed, her breathing pattern changed, and her face subtly shifted from superiority to impending humiliation. The police officer stepped aside to radio headquarters for double confirmation, not because of doubt, but because perfect procedure ensures zero liability. The evidence was overwhelming, but the official process required sequence, clarity, and closure. Meanwhile, the narrator mentally reflected on his years within the HOA community. Years of watching families find for harmless decorations, for minor landscaping preferences, for play equipment, for harmless pets, for parking in their own driveways. The moment had become symbolic: facts versus ego, stability versus insistence, composure versus hysteria. The truth was forming like a heavy cloud ready to release an unavoidable downpour. The officer suggested visually confirming Karen's supposedly missing SUV to eliminate all remaining confusion. She hesitated, stalling, reluctant to move her feet toward her own driveway, almost as if walking toward proof would crumble the last pillar of her imagined version of events. Eventually she led the group toward her driveway, where her brand-new SUV sat motionless and untouched beneath a soft cloak of morning shade. The dealership papers were still visible in the window sleeve, the manufacturer sticker remained untouched, and the new car scent could almost be sensed from several feet away. The moment the officers compared the VIN between both vehicles, calm certainty transformed into indisputable evidence. Her claim had collapsed. Her reasoning had dissolved. Her confidence turned into public embarrassment. Neighbors whispered behind hands, exchanging subtle head shakes and suppressed reactions as her credibility evaporated on the spot. Not a single detail aligned with her accusation. She had not been robbed. No theft had occurred. No law had been broken. The real stolen asset was trust, the trust residents expected from leadership. Karen stood still, expression blank, caught in the spotlight of her own impatience and obsession. The neighborhood, once ruled by silent compliance, began shifting internally. For years, complaints remained unspoken and concerns left unsent, because Karen's authoritative energy had overshadowed normal conversation. But witnessing her meltdown, her false accusations, and her willingness to weaponize emergency services opened a psychological doorway for every resident. Her power began dissolving like sand slipping between fingers. The whispered conversations transitioned into full awareness, and the silent fear that had once surrounded her reputation broke apart like glass beneath weight. Some neighbors recalled old unjust fines, unexplained disciplinary letters, and confrontational reminders about arbitrary rule interpretations. Others remembered feeling judged for pets, family gatherings, minor yard decoration choices, or harmless outdoor hobbies. Her downfall became a shared release, not revenge but relief. The psychological grip she once maintained through intimidation had finally fractured. What once was considered leadership was now exposed as control fueled by insecurity. The police officers, maintaining full professionalism, informed Karen that filing false emergency accusations could carry legal repercussions, including fines, civil penalties, or potential misdemeanor charges if repeated. They documented every detail of the event, gathered visual confirmation, logged statements, and completed the case record. They reminded her clearly that emergency services must never be used as a weapon of personal preference, neighborhood politics, or emotional impulse. Though the narrator did not pursue charges, the officers left written notice outlining consequences should similar behavior occur again. Karen nodded slowly, aware that this was no longer just neighborhood drama but legally documented misconduct. Her face revealed stunned silence, not because she disagreed, but because reality had finally surrounded her from all angles, closing the escape routes she once relied upon: authority stance, performance confidence, and intimidation presence. Without those tools, she appeared small, almost unfamiliar, a public figure stripped of her imagined power. As the day passed, digital whispers turned into viral sharing. Clips recorded on smartphones spread across private neighborhood chat threads and social groups. Without effort, the incident evolved into community folklore and social media entertainment. Many residents found comfort not in the embarrassment of another, but in the validation that their feelings and fears were real. The narrator became a silent symbol of calm justice, not through aggression, but through patience and preparedness. Some residents approached him privately to thank him, not for confrontation, but for exposing truth without hostility. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt like a shared community rather than an enforced institution. Doors that once remained closed now opened. Greetings that once sounded generic now held sincerity. The balance of power had shifted permanently, creating a more human environment where respect mattered more than control. The HOA board members called an internal meeting to evaluate the situation formally. Though some members previously admired Karen's assertiveness, none could ignore the severity of her false accusation, now tied directly to police involvement. After reviewing the incident report and eyewitness accounts, the board concluded that Karen acted outside her responsibilities, used her position irresponsibly, and risked the legal standing of the HOA itself. The verdict: immediate removal from enforcement duties, suspension of HOA authority privileges, and mandatory behavioral review requirements. The announcement was posted publicly on the community bulletin system to ensure full transparency. Her leadership era ended that afternoon, not by rebellion, but by consequence. The narrator spent quiet evenings reflecting. Not in celebration, but in contemplation. The incident offered deeper lessons about power, ego, perception, and how easily assumptions can be mistaken for truth when emotion overtakes logic. He realized that sometimes the calmest person carries the most strength, because they rely on facts instead of noise. Every conclusion drawn reaffirmed that composure is not weakness, silence is not surrender, and patience is a strategic shield against irrational conflict. The SUV now symbolized more than transportation. It represented dignity, alignment, and identity against social pressure. Karen entered a period of noticeable withdrawal. Her porch, once used as an observation tower, remained empty. Her blinds, once constantly angled for surveillance, stayed closed. Her morning yard patrols ended abruptly. The silence indicated that she finally confronted something more intimidating than any rule violation: self-reflection. Her absence offered the community healing space, allowing neighbors to breathe freely without fear of sudden reprimand or unsolicited correction. Whether she experienced regret, embarrassment, or temporary defeat remained unknown, but the community recognized her silence as the loudest transformation she ever displayed. Weeks later, Maple Ridge slowly evolved into something more organic. Residents hosted friendly driveway conversations, children played longer outdoors, decorative creativity returned, and collaboration replaced silent compliance. The HOA transformed from authoritative enforcement into supportive communication. Rules remained, but interpretation shifted from rigid enforcement to shared consideration. A story that began with accusation ended as a catalyst for unity. The neighborhood rediscovered humanity without sacrificing structure. Though time passed, the event never truly faded. It became a neighborhood legend, retold to new residents, referenced during seasonal gatherings, and remembered as the turning point that changed Maple Ridge forever. The narrator remained respected not for confrontation, but for composure. His garage became a metaphor, a symbol that one person standing calmly with truth can change an entire social landscape. Life returned to peace, not by returning to old habits, but by embracing new balance. The narrator continued driving the same SUV, not as property, but as remembrance. Karen remained present in the neighborhood but no longer controlled it. The fear she once projected dissolved into normal coexistence. Neighborhood harmony did not depend on perfection, but understanding. The final lesson stood clear: truth does not need volume, it only needs patience.